He wasn't a king, nor a general, nor a warlord, but few names in history strike fear like his. In the late 15th century, one man became the symbol of religious terror. He orchestrated forced conversions, led mass torture campaigns, and sent thousands to the flames, all in the name of God. His name was de Torquemada, and he wasn't just any inquisitor. He was the first and most feared Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition. Subscribe to UTAK Diaries, where we dig up the darkest truths buried beneath the history books. Because sometimes monsters wear robes, not crowns. Torquemada was born in 1420 in the Kingdom of Castile, in what is now modern-day Spain. He came from a respected family and was educated in a Dominican monastery, a strict Catholic order known for discipline, austerity, and obedience. From a young age, was devout, almost obsessively so. He believed deeply in religious purity and saw the growing diversity in Spain as a spiritual threat. Jews, Muslims, converted Christians, and even other Catholics who questioned church practices, all of them, to him, were enemies of the soul. When Queen Isabella of Castile and King Ferdinand of Aragon began their campaign to unify Spain under one faith, Catholicism, Torquemada was the perfect man for the job. In 1478, with the blessing of Pope Sixtus IV, the Spanish Inquisition was born, and in 1483, Torquemada became its first Grand Inquisitor. That title may sound ceremonial, but make no mistake, he had absolute power to investigate, arrest, torture, and condemn anyone suspected of heresy. He wasn't just enforcing religion, he was re-engineering a nation. Under Torquemada's leadership, the Spanish Inquisition became a machine of terror. He created a vast spy network of priests, informants, and frightened citizens who would report on each other, often anonymously. No one was safe. Entire families were torn apart by accusations as small as lighting candles on a Friday night, or eating the wrong food on the wrong day. Once accused, the process was brutal. The accused weren't told who their accusers were. They weren't allowed to defend themselves properly. And most damning of all, they were tortured to extract confessions. These weren't symbolic tortures, these were real. The rack to pull joints apart, the strappado where victims were dropped from a height with their arms tied behind their backs, and of course, the fire public executions meant not only to punish, but to terrify. Torquemada believed that torture was justified, because saving a soul was more important than preserving a body, and thousands of people were caught in his righteous fire. Between 1480 and 1498, it's estimated that over 2,000 people were burned at the stake under his rule. Tens of thousands more were tortured, imprisoned, exiled, or forced to wear shameful clothing as punishment. Torquemada didn't stop at rooting out heresy. He wanted to purify Spain entirely. In 1492, the same year Columbus sailed west, Torquemada convinced Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand to expel all practicing Jews from Spain. That's over 100,000 people, some of them families who had lived in Iberia for generations, forced to flee with what they could carry, or face death. His justification, that even converted Jews couldn't be trusted, that they were secretly practicing Judaism in private, corrupting the purity of Catholic Spain. The result was catastrophic. Spain lost a huge portion of its scholars, doctors, financiers, and tradespeople. Communities were shattered, families torn apart, entire towns depopulated, all in the name of religious homogeneity. But to Torquemada, it was worth it. He saw Spain as a holy garden, and anything that wasn't Catholic was a weed, to be pulled out by the root, no matter the cost. And the most chilling part, he didn't do it for wealth. He lived a personally austere life. Wore plain robes, slept in a monk's cell. He truly believed he was saving souls. The Inquisition wasn't just about executions, it was about fear. Public burnings were ritual events, called autos da, acts of faith. These ceremonies often took place in public squares, with thousands in attendance. Condemned heretics, dressed in humiliating garments, would be paraded before the crowd. Their sins would be read aloud, before they were tied to the stake and burned alive. Torquemada was often present, not as a wild-eyed villain, but as a solemn, righteous man, standing silently at the edge of the fire. To him, he was offering them salvation through flame. But even within the church and court, voices began to whisper. Was the Inquisition becoming too powerful, too cruel? Was this truly about faith or control? The Pope himself tried to curb the Inquisition's reach, but Queen Isabella protected Torquemada fiercely. He had become a symbol of Catholic strength, a man too useful to remove. Still, his methods were becoming harder to justify. Rumors of false confessions, children accusing parents, people denouncing neighbors out of fear or revenge. The line between justice and hysteria blurred. But Torquemada pushed forward. He once wrote, "In order to save the soul of one man, we must be willing to destroy the flesh of 100. To him, this was a war, and every burned body was a spiritual victory. By Joshua de Torquemada died in his monastery at the age of 78. No one assassinated him. No one overthrew him. He died peacefully, protected by the same monarchy he served for decades. He was buried in a villa, and for a time, his tomb was guarded. But over the centuries, his remains were desecrated and scattered, a symbolic reflection of his legacy. Today, his name is synonymous with fanaticism, intolerance, and religious terror. He has become a byword for cruelty disguised as righteousness. The word Inquisition itself brings to mind images of fire, chains, and blind obedience. But here's the complicated truth. Torquemada didn't see himself as a villain. He saw himself as a servant of God, a purifier, a protector of souls. And that's what makes him so terrifying. Not that he was evil, but that he was certain he was good. The scariest monsters in history didn't think they were monsters at all. De Torquemada didn't seek fame or fortune. He sought salvation. But his path to heaven was paved with ashes, screams, and silence. They tried to erase their names. They tried to silence their stories. But here, on UTAK Diaries, we remember. Subscribe for more stories history tried to bury. Because the past, it's not dead, it's just been silenced.